And as a PMM, we do get to that point where moving across continents can be challenging. But I think becoming your own case study, you are responsible for telling your own story. So lean into your diverse experience. Do not shut it out. You just need to be able to tell a compelling narrative, just like your products and, how you develop proof points in product marketing. You need to also be able to do that within your career.
You are listening to This is Product Marketing, brought to you by Product Marketing Hive, the product marketing community that gives back. I'm your host, Louise Liu. Product Marketing Hive and this podcast are supported by Product Marketing Edge, the technology product marketing consulting firm. In this episode, Fara Joaquim shared her story of building a product marketing career across borders. Let's dive into it right now. Hi, Fara. Welcome to the show.
Hi, Louise. Thank you for having me.
Great to have you here. When we first met, it was really interesting to hear about your product marketing journey, how you moved from Nigeria to break into Canada market. So, first question, how did you begin your career in product marketing?
My career as a product marketer started when I was consulting in Lagos, where I supported a small healthcare company through a data bridge. And at the same time, I was also helping a real estate company launch a smart home platform. So I found myself basically obsessing over how we were positioning features that directly impacted people's privacy and safety. And that experience basically made something click where I was able to identify the importance of privacy, the importance of trust and clarity in messaging. And that basically led me into communication and product marketing. So that's where I realized that in doing the work of a product marketer, you basically need to be empathetic and communicate clearly to get your customers' trust. And when I moved to Canada, it was a full reset. I had to reprove myself in a completely new market with new expectations, and no built-in existing network, basically. I took on a campaign strategy role, including one with Google, where I helped businesses scale their messaging through a structured channel and paid performance campaigns. So I saw that it was basically the same skill with communicating trust to those businesses in clarity and empathy as well. And that customer first thinking worked for me in moving, on in different roles that I took on. But that chapter also taught me something more valuable, which is resilience. And as a PMM, we do get to that point where moving across continents can be sort of challenging, can also overwhelm us at the same time. But I think becoming your own case study, you are responsible for telling your own story. So that's one thing I always tell marketers, that just find a niche, tell your own story. Do not be scared of the varying experiences from different places. You can write that story and you can tell it. So basically, that's how I got into product marketing, to answer your question. And yeah, I'm still here.
That's great. You moved from Nigeria to Canada. Tell us a little bit more about that journey. What challenges did you face when you break into the new job market as a product marketer?
Good question. Breaking into the Canadian job markets as a product marketer was humbling, I'd say. And honestly, one of the most defining chapters of my career, because I came from a background in Lagos where I had built like real impact in my own understanding and within my own atmosphere. I felt like I had some sort of achievements under my belt. I had a publication, I was speaking at events. So it seemed to me like I'd reached the peak. But then moving here, I see that there's a need to not only tell that story, but quickly translate that. I guess it's not only what you can show on paper that you've done, you also need to be able to tell that story and quickly learn the importance of credibility here. Like nobody here knows of your experience back home. That's why, again, storytelling is really important. I quickly learned that. And it's about who knows what you've done. And that is why networking, again, is really important here, because especially as an immigrant who has no existing network in a new country, there were moments where I'd get told that your experience is interesting, but we're not sure if it fits. And that's where there's doubt, right? Again, it's your ability to speak confidently to reassure people, but also lean into it, lean into your diverse experience. Do not shut it out and be ashamed of it. I've doubled down on my own storytelling. I've learned how to explain value in a way that made people listen. And that basically made me adapt faster. I took courses where necessary, where necessary, audited frameworks that I applied back home but didn't exactly apply here. And I'm such a framework person. I just need to point that out. So I audited that, read books as well, because one thing I always say is that someone has lived your experience, and the perfect hack for you is if they've written about it, and a great way to navigate your life is being able to apply what they've written about, understand where their story points to and where yours stands out, and apply that in your life. I realized that early on, just need to be able to tell a compelling narrative, just like your products, and how you develop proof points in product marketing. You need to also be able to do that within your career, and I'd say that's what I've built, and I'm still building. Um, been joining webinars, talking to founders, and that's what has gotten me some of the opportunities that I have today.
You talk about the ability to translate experience into a narrative that helped you to break in the doors in Canada job market. How did you do it, right? What's your advice for product marketers on crafting this personal narrative?
I'd say build your own personal brand first. But before even doing that, there's a need to reflect. There's a need to think about what those highlights were in your previous experience and how you could use that as the first speaking point in any conversation. Um, and I think this is something that I gained from being working with brands, working in agency. There's a lot of brand building, and then translating that again into your personal life. There, if you notice as a brand manager, you need to be able to have a tone of voice, to stand out in a competitive space. How do you? We always think as of how to create TOMA, top of mind awareness, and you always know how to think of how do you position these colors. Like, there's so many things to that goes into building a brand, and I'd say apply that into your own personal life. If you want to have like a cool glasses, this glasses I wore for like 1 year, and it brought up so many conversations because I wanted to come off. I have such a fun, colorful personality, and I wanted to shine that out into how I present myself. So build your own personal brand first, and then reflect what industry. I think again, if have to go back into today's job market, which is completely different from what it was 3 years ago or even before COVID. Right now, there's the importance of being industry specific. So again, identify those wins you have from your previous experience, be it from the country you're moving from. See where your strong suits lie, within what industry were you in, where you found the best of yourself, where you achieved the most. You found yourself, smiling every day to work and having fun. It didn't really feel like a job. And that's why I decided that I was going to hone in on my technical and experience and be within the regulated environments because it was important to me. That was where I found more of my empathy skills, and I think I have that. So I wanted to hone in on that. Um, so now I don't really speak more of my previous other experiences that are not really getting me towards being within that regulated environment. I do have those other experiences, but right now they're not necessary because I have defined a clear path to how I want to show up. Outside of building your personal brand, and then identifying those wins, the important thing is now to put yourself in the sight of those people, the kind of people you want to show up as tomorrow, people that you want to be in the next 3, 4, 5 years. Attend networking events that are tied to, again, be specific, be strategic. I wouldn't just say network. Yeah, you can network and it's not bringing any value. Again, the importance of reiteration. Make sure that you're showing up in the spaces that are valuable to you. I think everybody should have like a 60-second pitch of themselves. If you were locked in an elevator with the CEO of a company that you'd want to work with, how would you position yourself? How would you just have that pitch that You're woken up by 3 a.m. in the morning and you can't speak to it. I think taking that pitch to those environments where you want to see yourself.
You also told me you led the launch of a product that was deeply tied into a local challenge back in Nigeria. Can you tell us that story?
So my time in Lagos, Nigeria, I worked with a real estate company. If you've ever lived there, you know electricity can be unreliable and outages are common. Costs can also be unpredictable. Managing electricity usage as well is a constant frustration for any homeowner. And while working at this company, I decided to have like an early discovery interview with some of these homeowners. We did have a solution, but I wanted to see how that solution impacts their lives, where we would be a standout company, but also just it was more from the lens of how do we make their lives easier because they are customers of the company. So during the early discovery interviews, sat down with some new homeowners to understand their day-to-day challenges. Again and again, the same thing came up. I don't feel in control of my electricity. Electricity usage was different at different months. They were paying different fees and all of that. And that insight became an opportunity for me and the company. So I worked cross-functionally with engineers and the operations teams. We developed a smart home automation feature that allowed residents monitor and manage their electricity usage in real time and also remotely because Lagos is a place where there's a lot of traffic. It's a fast moving city, right? You possibly will not be at home, but want to be able to control the usage of what to turn on at a certain time, how to turn it off. Those things were basically how we had decided that, you know what, how do we bring this to life? Within a future where we can also tie it to being environmentally conscious in our messaging, and showing how this feature can help reduce waste and also promote smarter energy usage and your reducing your cost as well. So when we launched it, it wasn't we didn't launch it as a feature. We launched it as a solution to a problem, and we ensured that it spoke directly to a lived everyday problem. Adoption was sort of immediate, and homeowners were we scored the satisfaction again to be able to tell how just be able to reiterate, go back and see how we were able to speak directly to those pain points. But for me, the real win was seeing how starting with empathy and listening deeply, and also connecting the dots between what the homeowner said and how we were able to translate that into the capability of the products, really led to a solution. And that genuinely made people's lives better, and I'm happy for it.
Once you uncover that the inconsistent electricity supply was one of the key challenges that you like to address with the product, how did you work with product team and turn it into a product decision?
It was easy because one thing that I always say as a product marketer is when you're able to speak in data, speak with numbers, it's easy for you to get buy-in. And aside that, not only do you speak in data, but then also talk about the whys, why this is an important solution to the pain point. So I think the fact that I was able to have those customer interviews was easy because I could identify the pain points from what people said, and every solution or every reason why was tied to a pain point that a person had mentioned. So, being able to speak data, being able to translate that into real value is one way that I know that I was able to get buy in. Another thing is, I think people trust what they understand. People trust what they know. Point back to how I say I'm a framework person. If someone knows that there's a framework I use in my workflow, they believe that I can keep myself accountable and stay on track. And they believe that I'm also able to replicate what I've applied in another similar scenario. And also that ability to be able to adapt it to different scenarios is important. So I think one critical thing that you should be able to tell again goes back to storytelling, having that data mindset, and also seeing the importance of speaking value because you do want to ensure that every solution you're bringing does have an actual value to a pain point, right? And also tying it back to a framework where people trust that you're capable, you're competent, and you know how to keep yourself accountable. I think those are things that helped me.
So, if someone is listening and they're wondering, how can I build this customer centric skills or mindset as a product marketer, what would you tell them?
A lot of PMMs do underestimate the importance of that. Now, however, you want to learn that is basically coming from a point of empathy. So, whether you're a junior PMM or a director, building customer centricity starts with making curiosity your default setting and empathy as well. It's about refusing to assume you know what the customer wants, even when you've been in that space for years. And I think it's built when you start every messaging, every campaign, every launch, you speak directly in interviews. I think that's where you're able to fill in the shoes of the customer, understand their perspective, and understand their lived experiences to be able to speak the customer centric language. You need to be able to answer the question of what problems are we solving and why does it matter to this particular persona. So if you're early in your career, I would say join sales calls as much as you can, even when you're not invited. Um, watching those support tickets, reading G2 reviews, learning the language that customers use, so that you can translate that in your messaging. And more importantly, sitting in this discomfort of realizing that your first idea might not be the best one and it might change over time. If you're a senior product marketer, customer centricity is about building the infrastructure to keep that feedback open. So you need to be able to take in feedback and see how, yes, your years of experience might not exactly again translate to how this is critical right now. Um, so it's not about being close to the customer in terms of relationships and stuff. It's about ensuring that the team has access to those insights. And you're also the facilitator of truth. So just make sure that you're the voice of the customer. Um, yeah, that's what I'd say. Again, remember the importance of empathy, especially in technical products. It's easy to get wrapped up in this feature, that feature, and the complexity of everything. You want to show off what your product can do, but always try to ensure that you are the why. You're the answer to the why, right? Because that's where trust is built and value becomes visible to the users.
So, how do you see the role of product marketing changing with now the hype of AI? Where do you see it has the most impact in terms of the field of product marketing?
I say the biggest shift I see is that AI is redefining the speed at which product marketers work. PRMs used to spend a longer time researching, speaking to customers, which is still important to do that. But I think there's a speed to it now. The amount of things you can achieve within your workflow is now insane compared to what it was. And I've experienced that firsthand. That has definitely impacted the speed at which I can deliver. I'll just say how I use AI and how that has helped me be more of an impactful product marketer. I basically use AI to help structure or restructure positioning documents, summarize internal notes. AI is like my strategic partner that can help me think about something that I have not really captured, and even pressure testing messaging frameworks before actually sending them out to stakeholders. But the biggest value is, again, I think that ability to see AI as a strategic partner, assistant, just basically expand your thinking. Sometimes I'll feed a rough angle into a prompt and get back a variation that unlocks a deeper narrative. And I think one thing that has really helped me do that is I went into studying prompt engineering. I took courses in prompt engineering to be able to get the best value. And because I don't see it as outsourcing your thinking, I think AI is there to amplify it. And the best product marketers are people who understand how to use prompting to get, to amplify their thinking, to help, bring value into their day to day. And I think it has helped, me personally develop sharper messaging, faster enablement decks, and even more confident launches, I'd say. Looking ahead, I do see AI having the most impact in, early stage ideation, which I think is where I think most teams should be able to use AI, introduce AI into that early stage ideation process, and then synthesizing customer research for sure, and internal enablement. PMMs are expected to act faster, iterate smarter, and then bring insight to the table. And that typically would take weeks. So why not just use AI to speed up that process? And I even think it's more critical for solo PMMs working in small startups. You need to be able to fill in numerous roles at the same time. So if you have that opportunity to use AI and spend less time on the hard stuff, then please do that. The future is people who are AI specific product marketers. If you need to take courses to understand, and I think this is something that I also learned from a recent podcast that I listened to. Yes, you can study it, you can know how to use it, but learn how it works, learn the mechanics of it. I think that would definitely set you apart. The best PMMs are the people who do the work and create that space on how to remain strategic, how to be deeply in tune and serve the customers more meaningfully. And the best way you could do that as a better PMM, providing value every single time that you have a meeting, providing value as someone who shows up as somebody that doesn't just rely on one thinking process. So again, incorporate that second thought, incorporate that partner into your workflow, and you would win. There's a new wave coming. Just make sure that you're staying ahead of it.
Thank you for tuning in to This is Product Marketing, brought to you by Product Marketing Hive, a product marketing community that gives back. Check out our website, productmarketinghive.com, to join our community, meet fellow product marketers, and access free resources. If you enjoyed our podcast, please subscribe and give a 5-star rating on the platform of your choice. See you next time.